Good morning, shop.org. Hopefully everyone's feeling great on this beautiful Vegas morning. I'm Scott Likens with PwC, and I lead our emerging technologies group, and I'm really excited to be here because I love blockchain. My favorite topic is blockchain. So Kevin set the stage with some really amazing messages about living the values of innovation. He also has some awesome videos. So hopefully the video got you thinking about blockchain. And I'm going to walk you through in a very short time, what is blockchain? What is Bitcoin? And why does it matter? Throughout the conversation, please feel free to tweet me questions with the hashtag PwC blockchain. We're going to answer those at the end. So let me first start by painting a vision. When I think about technology, I always think about the future. So let's imagine this world. Let's imagine a world with a blockchain integrated into everything. What would that look like? Well, what if this world had our own data as customers everywhere, but yet safer than ever? It gave customers the ability to control and keep it private. That's better. Imagine this world where you as a business could seamlessly communicate with your suppliers with no one in the middle. How much time and money do we spend moving data around our ecosystem? Imagine a world where you didn't have 400 passwords, where you had a single digital enduring identity, whether you're a person, a consumer, or a business. Think about a world where I could understand the authenticity and the provenance of any product, where I could follow food from farm to table. I could see where that's been and who's touched it. I could guarantee the safety and authenticity. Think about following your money with full transparency, whether it's a donation, a payment, or a purchase. Understanding everyone in the middle or having no one in the middle. Think about the world where the unbanked, billions of people today don't use a bank, but they do use a cell phone, a smartphone. Think about how they can stay connected financially. I think our world is changing rapidly, and I get really excited about it. I think back to my own digital journey. I started many, many years ago, and I had the honor of working on the first internet browser. I know, it doesn't seem possible. I was very young, but I worked on Mosaic, and I saw this opportunity ahead of us. I was studying to be a pilot. I gave it all up because I saw the internet as something that was going to fundamentally change the world. And I lived that. I saw it happen in real time. I saw e-commerce change everything about how we as consumers interact with every brand. Fast forward to today. The world's changing fast. 2/3 of every CEO think that technology is going to disrupt their business. Not competitors, not markets, not global economic crisis, but technology. Why is that? Because consumers are changing. They expect this technology. They're changing very fast. I just spent the last 5 years living and working in China. Is anyone watching what's happening in China? Is anyone watching what's happening with consumers in China? Some would say 200, 300, 400 million new middle class have come online as digital natives, digital only. The mobile phone is their life. So their expectations have changed. We as retailers, we as executives have to think about this. They expect social, they trust their peers, they don't trust the brands. They expect seamless, online, offline. They want it to be personal, they want it to be transparent, and most of all, secure. Now, they're willing to give away their personal information if there's value exchange for them, but they want it to be protected. We see what's happening in Europe. We see what's happening in America. Protection of information is the number one thing we need to think about. And I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes why I think blockchain solves all of these problems for us in a way we've never been able to do before. A lot of the concepts in that future vision were always technically possible, but they weren't business feasible. We couldn't pull it off. It was too complex, it was too expensive, it was just too hard. I think blockchain has fundamentally changed that. So the other thing I think has changed is the reality of emerging technologies turning the corner. Over the last 5, 6, 7 years, the cloud the ability to store data forever has changed the game. So we think about the essential 8. Some would say these are emerging technologies. I will say these are essential technologies. Today we're going to talk really in depth on blockchain. So I'm going to spend 10 or 12 minutes on that. But you can't ignore the fact that artificial intelligence, which maybe some would say started around 60 years ago, 60, 57, something in that range. It's been around a long time. Why now? Well, it's now got data. It's now got ultimate access to data, and that's what it thrives on. So artificial intelligence has turned the corner. Virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality. The devices have turned the corner. Think about Internet of Things and the ability to now monitor our physical environment in a very different way, generating more data. Robotics, 3D printing, drones. No matter what business you're in, every one of these 8 technologies is worth investing in. I will challenge anyone with any sector or any business, and I will tell you the use case around the essential 8. So let's get into blockchain, because I think blockchain is huge. Gartner will say 3 trillion by 2030. I think it's conservative. The interesting stat here, we just did a blockchain survey. 84% of executives say they're doing something in blockchain. So look around your table. Who's the one person who's not? Are you that one person? Now, this doesn't mean they're live. This doesn't mean this is in production, but it means they're doing something. They know that this technology will change things. And I think that's really exciting. So what is blockchain? You're probably thinking in your head, if you haven't heard of blockchain, you've definitely heard of Bitcoin. But let's start with blockchain. Blockchain is one of the most complex technologies ever invented to solve an elegantly simple problem. As the internet came online, and the internet was built to share information, it was brilliant. It let us put information out and have anyone access it, and that's really cool. But as it started to become an e-commerce channel, as we started to digitize assets, the thing the internet doesn't do well is protect the double spend problem of digital assets. So just around 10 years ago, an anonymous person named Satoshi wrote this simple paper that said, we need to solve this problem in a different way. And blockchain was born. It's, again, solving a very simple problem. If I have a digital asset, I can email that to 100 people. How do I know which one is the original and protect that asset and know who owns it? And blockchain was meant to solve that. And it solves it in, again, an elegantly simple way. Today, all of our businesses are based on ledgers. My ledger and your ledger, and someone in the middle guaranteeing those things work. My firm, PwC, has an entire business model around assuring transactions in ledgers. Well, Satoshi, or whoever that is, said, well, what if we just all shared the same ledger? None of that would matter. We could all have the same visibility to the transactions happening. We could create a distributed, tamper-proof digital ledger and send it everywhere. And blockchain was born. It uses very complex things like cryptography and mathematics and things that we had never combined before to make this an immutable or unchangeable way to share data about asset ownership and transfer. So how did we make it work? I think it was a brilliant strategy when Bitcoin was invented on top of that. Now, Bitcoin and blockchain are related but separate. Bitcoin was the first unregulated digital virtual currency, or a crypto. My theory is this was an intelligent way to test the architecture and the security of that blockchain. If we put value into the system, hence Bitcoin, bad people are going to attack it. They're going to try and get that value out of it. And no matter what you've heard today, it's never been beaten. The news stories you hear about the fraud, the thefts, those all happen outside of the blockchain. So Bitcoin, over the last 10 years, has helped us test this architecture. It's created a way to find out, can we trust this? And I will say it's the most secure thing we've ever seen. The internet was invented to share. This was invented to protect. Assets of any kind, crypto being the first one, but not the only one. So we think about the 4 fundamentals of the blockchain. Distributed ledger. Not necessarily a concept no one had thought of, but how we actually distributed it was very different. A P2P network, giving everyone access to the same ledger. This was huge. We then protected it. We made it unchangeable. We made it unbeatable using cryptography. A cryptography that continues to advance and make sure that no one can break in. No one can change what's been put into that ledger. We then use consensus. We ask every node in the network to say, is this okay? And once they do that, we know that transactions are valid. Once we understand and trust transactions, what can we do? It's endless. We can now build our entire businesses around a trusted source of data shared with all of our partners that no one person can control or own. We can create smart contracts to execute business functionality. We can do amazing things. So if you think about it very simply, if I have some sort of digital asset, something as simple as a phone and a QR code, I can initiate a transaction to send it to you. We will then ask the network to verify I have that asset and to change the ownership to you and send it out to everyone else. Once that's complete, it will be blocked together, encrypted, and chained to the rest of the data that's there forever. Hence the word blockchain. Again, simple in its design, complex in its execution. So as we fast forward to today, what's happened? So Bitcoin got over the hurdle, right? Of course, it was the dark web that started it, but the reality is Bitcoin was a self-fulfilling prophecy. As it became valuable, people wanted it. More people bought it. More people mined it. It became useful. And what that did is helped us understand the architecture. So now fast forward to today, and we can think about all of the other sorts of things we can digitize. The physical world can now be tracked in the virtual world using the blockchain as an irrefutable source of what's going on. So utility tokens, commodity tokens, security tokens. These are all really interesting aspects of how we can change our business models and bring this physical world into the virtual world in a way we've never seen before. It's a different paradigm. So do you think this matters for retail? Probably not, right? It's gonna be short. I think it's huge. We just did a study, released 2 weeks ago, a week ago, I forget, 10 days, something like that. Kudos to you. Retail's a little bit ahead. We're seeing about 20% of live blockchains because there's so much value in that. The consumers are going to see this, whether it's in the mobile payments and the way they interact with you as a brand, or the supply chain, the transparency, and I'll give you a use case at the end around understanding from manufacturer to consumption what's happened to a product. But think about our back offices. Think about our ecosystem of partners. Think about all the work and cost that goes into just keeping that, in an understandable, unchangeable way, something that we can use. We can optimize our back office. The other thing we asked is, what part of the business is going to affect? I talked about crypto, but I think the huge opportunity is in something like a supply chain, something that has a lot of areas of data that we can't get at with partners, whether it's logistics or manufacturers. We can unlock that potential. Think about our back office and taking out intermediaries across everything in the finance department. Think about reinvigorating our loyalty programs. Kevin did a great job talking about loyalty, but think about what blockchain now opens up for us to create an extra prize, a connection out to other partners in a very cheap and effective way. There's many more. There's a lot of barriers in front of us, right? Regulators are still trying to get their heads around this. We still don't understand it. It's a complex technology, but there's so much opportunity there. So if we think about why executives are hesitating, regulators. Now, again, I just came from China, and I'm seeing Singapore, I'm seeing Hong Kong, I'm seeing the Chinese government being so aggressive in blockchain. What are we doing in the US? Why aren't we pushing them to say, this is actually what you want? It gives you full transparency. It lets you understand the financials of everything happening in a much better way, in real time, not in a look back. Regulators will love this once they understand it. Executives still don't trust it. It's a complex technology. It's really hard to understand. So there's a distrust there, but think back to the 1996s of the internet. Who trusted that? Now we don't even think twice. Blockchain's getting there, but we have to overcome that fear. And where's the investment happening? We asked the same executives, and they said the US is far ahead, but we think in a few years China is going to get us. And I say, let's take that challenge. I was in China. I see what they're doing. They are after it. They're investing in it. They're excited about it. They see the potential. So how can we catch up, or how can we stay ahead, rather? I think there's 4 ways. I think there's 4 ways we want to think about this. First, start with the business case. And I'm going to be very bold and say blockchain is not going to solve most of your problems. I have 6 criteria here. If you don't hit 4 or 5 or 6 of those criteria altogether, then don't use blockchain. Use the technology you already have. Blockchain is meant to solve problems in a different way, but only certain problems. The other thing I say is commit to a new way of working. Because the reality is you have to take an experimental approach. You have to get over that fear and do something. Because if you want to just study and research and kind of think about it, you'll do that forever. Blockchain is changing fast. So commit to a new way of working. Take an agile mindset. Experiment. But frame that problem in business, a business issue, a business solution, not a technology one. Hit these 6 criteria, get a team together, and try it out. But also try it out in a way that is an ecosystem play. I use the word extra prize. We're always focused on our enterprise, but the reality is there's tremendous value in solving that extra prize problem. How do we work better with partners? How do we take cost out of that system? How do we get all the intermediaries out of it? Focus on a cooperative view. Think about the data you're going to share. This is early days. There's not a lot of standards. This is a problem. Do some experiments with very like-minded partnerships. Create that ecosystem. That's where the value lies. And then design deliberately. Someone's going to ask the question, permissioned, unpermissioned, hybrid. These are terms you're going to hear in the technology discussions. It doesn't matter. Think back to the internet again. Intranet, internet. Do we even think about it? No, it's seamless. Blockchain will get there. We're early days. A lot of smart people are thinking about this. But design deliberately. There are choices you have to make. Am I going to have a private blockchain with my partners? Am I going to have a public blockchain that I have with an open network? You have to think about that. Determine those rules for engagement early because they are architecturally important, and then invest in the data and the processes that we're going to use the blockchain to enable. And then finally, I said it before, but let's push the regulators. Watch, but don't wait. Think about the areas that we can go after without regulatory oversight, and use that as the case to make with the regulators around why we should do this a lot broader. If you think about, again, look at this statistic. China has the lowest concern about compliance. The government, the regulators, they are pushing the pace. I think we need to change that here in the US and in Europe and in other countries. But let's really monitor, and it's going to evolve fast. Let's look at what's happening globally, and then let's apply it locally. So with those 4 things, I want to end on an example of where this comes to life. I had the honor of working, and I can't go into details, of course, but working with Alibaba on a very important problem. The government in China is very concerned about food safety, is very concerned about protecting citizens, and wanted to know how to do that. And Jack Ma passionately felt like Alibaba could help solve that problem. He engaged us to think about a food safety framework. How would we understand from manufacturer in New Zealand, Australia, US, products like vitamins and milk powder, what happens to them along this really complex supply chain? So mom and dad are just sitting there online buying some milk powder for their baby. What happens in between? And how can we guarantee that authenticity? Unfortunately, there's been a lot of issue with counterfeit foods causing harm to the citizens, and the government wants it stopped. But if you think fast forward, pharmaceuticals, all sorts of industries could take advantage of this concept. So in this case, we were able to show that blockchain was likely the only way, in a cost-effectively, feasibly, that we could combine a multitude of partners, from the manufacturers, the farmers, to the logistics providers, to customs and multi-country transport players, to e-commerce, all the way down to mom and dad, very simply scanning a QR code and seeing that this milk powder is safe. I mean, this is tremendously powerful. They're going to put this milk powder into their baby's mouth and seeing what's happened, that it's been controlled, they understand everyone that's touched it is really powerful. And in fact, what we also did is we went out and asked them, would they be willing to pay more for that? And shock, they will. So again, think about the different opportunities we have as retailers, as businesses, to think about the provenance or authenticity, whether it's luxury goods, food, vitamins, medicine, car parts. We can completely take fraud out of the system. We can, I think, damper counterfeit, maybe not kill it, but and then we can provide a moment that matters to those customers. We can now engage them and say, we're here for you. We want you to understand this product all the way back to the beginning because it's important to us as a brand. So I won't talk more about that. I will go to questions, but I will say blockchain is rewiring commerce. It's rewiring businesses from the back office to the front office. Consumers want it. Believe it or not, they know what it is. They may be mining Bitcoin, but they understand that blockchain is important and it's different. So whether you lead or follow, I'd say start now. There's a lot to learn. Take an experimental approach. Be excited, embrace it, and start small, but think big. So thank you. That was a short time to understand a complex topic. I want to bring it to life and make it real. I'm going to have a roundtable later at 11, so I'm happy to sit down and get into any of those details. If we want to talk cryptography and mathematical algorithms, that's cool. If you want to talk about other industries or use cases, that's great too. But now, if you want to tweet me some questions, I'm happy to answer them live. Hashtag PwC blockchain. Let's go for it. So first question, the biggest misconception about blockchain. I think, quite honestly, it's such a buzzword, right? When you think about the essential 8, all these emerging technologies, people are really excited about them. Artificial intelligence, IoT, blockchain. I'm a contrarian. I don't think blockchain solves all our problems. I think it solves problems in a different way. I think it's a big, bold approach. It means we're taking enterprise data and putting it out into the public. We're sharing it with people that we never shared it with before. We can't control it. We can't change it once it's there. It's a really hard concept to think about. But the biggest misconception is it's going to replace everything. It's not. Our core enterprise systems are going to be there. They will need to be future-proofed with blockchain. But again, go back to those 6 criteria. If I'm not interacting with multiple parties, expecting updates with multiple parties, wanting to ensure I know who those parties are, I want that in pretty near real time, and I want it consistent and unchangeable, then I don't think blockchain is the answer. So we have to think about it with the right mindset. We have to go into it with an open mind, but be very specific and design deliberate. So next question, how does blockchain compare to AI or other emerging technologies like IoT? Well, first off, it's probably the youngest. So I think I mentioned it, but does anyone know the blockchain Bitcoin manifesto? It was about 2008. First open source code was around 2009. No one knew about it. Probably anyone in this room, maybe 2013, 14, you started to think about it. It's a very young technology. AI, on the flip side, has been around 50, 60 years. And you'll say, well, why is it taking so long for AI? Well, AI's challenge was data. We never had enough of it, but now we do. And blockchain is actually a key piece of that. Blockchain actually lets us share data like we never have been able to before in a secure way. So AI actually thrives in a blockchain world. I'd say the same thing in IoT. Maybe it's in the same range of maturity, a little bit more than blockchain, but IoT, Internet of Things, is now giving us the ability to get much more data from the physical world through device integration. And I'm really excited about IoT, and I think IoT plus blockchain becomes a really compelling environment. So while I talk about those essential 8 individually, I think they all work together quite specifically. And AI, IoT, and blockchain are the 3 that I think are an absolute no-brainer to invest in and figure out how to work together with. Next question, do I own Bitcoin? Why would I answer that? The question should be, which cryptos do I own? Of course I own Bitcoin. When did I buy it is the real question. Did I mine it? That's the real question. Should you own it? I'm not going to give financial advice. PwC definitely is not going to give financial advice. I think crypto is a very interesting concept. I don't think crypto is going away. I think Bitcoin is the flat-out leader, of course. It's the first, it's the original, it's a stable. The question comes into regulation. You've seen different regulators rule in different ways. Of course, the US versus Asia has very different patterns. China has said Bitcoin is illegal. China has the biggest trading platforms of Bitcoin in the world. So I think it's a personal choice, of course, but I believe crypto's here to stay in many new forms. You may have heard of an ICO, an initial coin offering. I think the way of financing, the way of startup and angel funding, you'll see more and more crypto. Maybe not Bitcoin specifically, but crypto in general is here to stay. Next question, if blockchain makes data sharing transparent without intermediaries, will it lead to disintermediation of certain supply chain participants? Yes. Next question, no, I'm kidding. It absolutely is going to disrupt anyone sitting in the middle of 2 businesses when the only value they provide is guaranteeing what's happening on both sides. Now look, I'm going to reflect. I work for PwC, one of the biggest professional accounting firms, and most of our business is assuring transactions. If ledgers go away, what are we going to do? Well, the reality is there's a lot more to assure than just those ledgers. And automating that for us is great. We don't want our folks, our staff working on that anyway. We want them assuring what's happening at the endpoints. So I believe people in the middle have a lot to worry about if that's the only thing they offer. You have to look at the other value you're providing. And there are absolutely businesses that will go away, but there will be new businesses that pop up on the side of that. So think about the endpoints of a blockchain. Blockchain doesn't solve that. Question, you mentioned Alibaba. What other retailers are doing this well? So I can say, I've only been back in the US since July. So I was in China 5 years, so I have a much better view of that. And I'd say every multinational I worked with in China was talking about blockchain. I work with some luxury retailers, tremendous momentum around understanding what happens to a luxury product, whatever that is, from beginning to end. So there's a brand part of it. We can show the provenance. We can show the history. We can really tell our brand story a different way by simply engaging the customers and showing them where that product came from. Think about secondary markets, completely taking out counterfeit products from a secondary market, because now I can guarantee authenticity of products. We're seeing that come online. Again, combined with IoT, I can now mark products in a way that lets me track them in the blockchain. You've probably heard of the diamond registry, so I can follow diamonds from a purchase or theft perspective, but think about upstream. I can now guarantee diamonds are not blood diamonds because I can track them from the source. Again, using IoT, possibly AI, and definitely blockchain. I'd say across retail, we're seeing tremendous amounts of experiments. And again, go back to that stat, 85% are doing something, only about 15% live in production. So we're still early, but you're seeing great momentum. Next question, which other industries have the most valuable lessons for retailers? Who should we be watching? I think most industries are in about the same spot. People thought financial services companies were out ahead of the game. But the reality is regulation is much, much harder, so they're a bit stalled. So while they started early, they're not quite sure how this is going to change the business because, they kind of hide behind the regulation. Oh, we can't do it till the regulators understand it. But I'd say, again, in Singapore, they're going all in on financial services. But I'd say retail is out ahead of this because consumers want it. And quite honestly, consumers are willing to pay for it, which is a really important part of this puzzle, right? If we can guarantee the authenticity of products, depending on where we're selling them, there's a big upside, maybe from a pricing and sensitivity perspective. I look at pharmaceuticals and I look at automotive, I look at oil and gas. The reality is every industry has some very, very real and active use cases. Any heavy industries being able to irrefutably understand their assets using the blockchain, tying that into being able to do predictive maintenance because I know where the assets are, I know who owns them, I know everything about them in a very seamless way, which again was feasible before with other technologies, but very costly and not likely we could pull it off. Question, how do retailers get started? How do you start experimenting in a meaningful way? I personally feel passionately about the innovation concept, and Kevin did a great job about how do we live innovation. And I think some of his messaging was you just have to start. Think about what he said around products. That was a really hard decision, but they just did it. I think blockchain is similar. So I look internally, what we've done at PwC, we've gone all in. We've created our own R&D lab. We've staffed that lab with very different people. I'm not an accountant, trust me. We're trying to attract and retain talent that can bring this to life, but they need to bring it to life in a laboratory environment. That's a big challenge at a firm like mine. I think the same challenges exist for all of you. How do you build this in an organization that doesn't have a nice, easy way to stand it up? It crosses every silo of our business, from finance, supply chain, marketing, commercial, product development. So who would own it? You have to have somebody champion it, you have to have someone doing some experiments, and they have to be real experiments. Don't make it academic. That's the advice I'd say, is start with something real. Get a partner, a willing partner. Create some extra prize use case. Do a POC. I'm talking weeks, not months or years, weeks to get this stuff up and running. A lot of it's open source, a lot of it's free. The hardest challenge is finding the talent. So find the talent, find a partner, get something going. What are some other use cases for CPG? Mass products, not luxury ones. I am by no means a CPG expert, but if I think about fast-moving consumer goods, understanding where those end up in very complex supply chains, Blockchain can help me with that. I think about trade finance and all of the manual process around moving money around with our partners. Blockchain could solve that. I think about just tracking and tracing products for our own inventory optimization. Even tracking and tracing employees and associates, understanding workforce better, understanding the identity of that workforce, loyalty programs. Think about the money we put into loyalty programs. If we could cryptoize that, it takes a lot of cost out of the system. If China is starting to move faster, which is the greatest factor? Difference in consumers or how business are run or government? Well, it's actually absolutely all of them, right? The consumers there are very different, but what I'll tell you, I have a 6-month-old godson. He already uses a tablet. That consumer in 15, 16, 17 years will have even more expectations than the consumers we see today around digital. So in China, obviously there was a huge transition. All of a sudden, this middle class came online and all they have is the mobile phone. So the expectation was high. The sharing of information was high. So that was the spark. But the government got behind it. But let's think carefully. What does blockchain give us is ultimate transparency. So I won't say it directly, but think about what that means to a government. They can see the flow of every transaction now. So there's a lot of upside. Again, I think regulators love this. So with that, I'm going to close. I appreciate the questions. Those are great questions. I'm going to be at the round table. We can go into more depth. If you didn't already hear this, get started. Blockchain is here. It's more than a buzzword. And while it's only maybe 10 years, 9 years old, it's rapidly accelerating in maturity. Again, I lived the dot-com boom, bust, and boom. I saw it in the US, I saw it in China. I'm more excited about blockchain than I've been about e-commerce or the internet. I believe this will fundamentally change our businesses. It will fundamentally change the way we act with, or engage and act with our consumers, with our partners, with the ecosystem. Think extraprise and apply it where it really makes sense. So with that, I'm going to close. Have a great rest of the day here in Vegas. Thank you very much, shop.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our session. Today's Retail Power Lunch for retailers and exhibitors will take place in Hall C. No ticket required. A